Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the Ratliff Mandolins production diary. And I have decided this week to kind of break from tradition, and rather than give you an update on the batch and its progress, we'll discuss a certain issue that's weather related that will affect you if you're trying to shoot clear coat lacquer on top of an instrument, just like this right here. Now I opened this video up with a couple of shots of this mandolin before I put the color on. And so now I'm running into a issue of putting the clear coat lacquer on top of this. But first, let me run some footage of that very thing, of putting the color on it itself. We'll run that video and then I'll be back to discuss the issues that I'm having after that. Okay, so there's the color on the mandolin. Now, the next step is to put bill coats of clear coat lacquer on that until you get it up to where you can level sand it and that sort of thing. Polish it up, or in this particular case, it's a country boy, and I would shoot a satin finish on it. Putting the color on is not an issue at all. The stain goes on just fine. The issue comes when you're trying to put the clear coat on, and that issue is called blush or milk. And let me describe that to you. Blush or milk is a white, foggy look that comes in the clear coat. I'll try to get some pictures here so that perhaps you can see it a little better. Now, I'm no expert on finishing. I can only speak from my own personal experience. This is not a terrible, bad case of blush that can't be fixed, but it can get pretty bad at times. Let me explain exactly what you're looking at here. What you're looking at is the effects of a high relative humidity in the air. There's a lot of water in the air. Now, I live in East Tennessee, Upper East Tennessee, and in the summer months, it is very tropical around here. I've had visitors up here from Texas who has said, my goodness, how can you breathe? It's just so miserable. And I go, well, you're from Texas, it's supposed to be hot and everything. And their answer is invariably yes, but down there it's a dry heat. And up here it is so wet sometimes you think you could just take a spoon and dip water out of the air. Very, very high humidity, relative humidity. In fact, I got on the weather thing on the computer and just looked up what's relative humidities for today, and they were running in the lower 90s and upper 80s. The lowest relative humidity during the day would be somewhere around 4 or 5 o'clock, and it was running 65, 70, and so that's very, very wet. Now let me explain relative humidity to you. Now again, I'll say I am not an expert, but years and years and years ago, when I first started trying to build mandolins and stuff, and I run into this issue here, I actually got on the telephone and called the 1-800 National Weather Service, United States government, and said, I'd like to speak to a meteorologist and have somebody explain a few things to me. And relative humidity, as it was explained to me, is the percentage of water in the air before it becomes visible. And I assume that would be fog or a cloud. So if you've got 50% relative humidity, the air is filled up halfway to that point with water molecules, and therefore if you fill it all the way up to 100%, then it becomes foggy. The enough water molecules that will collect together that you can see it. Now, whether that's correct or not, I don't know. That's the way it was explained to me. So if you're running 85 and 90% humidity, that means that the air is just about saturated with as much water as it can possibly hold. And that's what we have here in East Tennessee in usually about the last 2 weeks of July and the first couple of weeks of August. It's wet, humid, and if the temperature's high enough, it's usually pretty miserable. Now, this government guy that I talked to, this very nice man that worked for the National Weather Service, he explained to me that as the day heats up, the sun heats the air expands, that water more or less expands with it, and there is a lower relative humidity usually between 4 and 6 o'clock in the day. And if you look at your hourly, if you go to the computer and pull up one of the weather .coms and look at the hourly relative humidity that's listed there, you will find that most of the time the lowest relative humidity in the day is between 4 and 5 or 6 o'clock, 3 and 6 o'clock, something like that. So that's the best time to shoot finish. And you say, okay, well, what's that got to do with it? Well, let me explain to you what shooting, how the relative humidity affects you shooting a clear coat of finish on a mandolin. And to do that, just let me grab my spray gun. When you pull the trigger on this spray gun, the way the spray gun works and everything, the finish comes out the tip here, and it's in a fine mist. A whole lot of droplets, teeny tiny droplets of finish, lacquer in the can, and that passes through the air. Each of those droplets are passing through the air and hitting air that has water in it, and that water is collecting on that droplet of lacquer, and then when it hits the finish and spreads out, that water is in that lacquer now as well, those water molecules. And when those tiny lacquer droplets hit the finish or hit the mandolin itself and spread out and flows together, a certain amount of that water is inside that lacquer. And if quite often, if it's a mild case, you got your lacquer really thinned down, that water will kind of come out to the surface, and then when the lacquer skims over, it'll just be on the very kind of top trying to get out, which is exactly what we've got right here. Most of this blush and milk is on the very surface, and you can just sand it and it'll go away for the next coat to lay on. Now, just so that you'll know, I've had this issue for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and so both of these mandolins give me the same trouble. A little bit of blush in them, and I just sand it out and shoot the next coat over top of it. Now, it was fine. Now the next coat over top of it would blush as well, so I keep thinning it down and keep thinning it down to give it a longer time to stay wet on the instrument and give that water a chance to come out before the lacquer skims over and kind of traps it inside. And when conditions are just right and you overdo things, that is the problem. The lacquer will skim over before the water comes out, and then that water is trapped in there, and you have blush that's you can't really get out. You just about, at times it can get bad enough that you almost have to strip the finish and start over again. So it's a very dangerous time for the instrument to be shooting in weather conditions like this. But there are things that you can do to combat that as well. Number one, you can pay real close attention to the time of day that you're shooting. You don't shoot in the mornings or midday. You wait until the last thing before you go home in the day, 4 or 5, 6 o'clock. You get the lowest relative humidity. You can load the finish down with thinner and make it just as thin as possible so that you can leave that finish stays soft enough for the moisture to work its way out longer. Also, you can actually purchase what they call slow flash thinner, and I don't exactly know how it works, and I have used it before in the past. It's supposed to keep the finish wet longer for the very purpose of giving that moisture more time to get out before the finish skims over. And I should have mentioned earlier there that if it is severe enough, it's there forever. That blush is there forever. It won't ever come out. That moisture's trapped in there, and it's skimmed the lacquer has hardened over top of it, and it's holding it in there, and it will always have this milky white look. So this is not just a passing problem that you can ignore. It's something you better pay attention to. Don't shoot very thick coats at all, and shoot at the right time of day, like I said, blah blah blah. So right now I'm just having a minor problem with it. I've overcome it with these mandolins, and I'm sure I'll probably be okay with this one. But if the next one comes along and I'm still having these really, really high humidities, I'm just going to hang it up and wait until the weather is better to continue finishing, shooting, finishing, that sort of thing. And that will probably come along in probably 3 or 4 weeks. So it kind of spoils the flow of things to have more than one here ready to shoot finish on, but you just can't do it. But that's about what I'm going to have to do. These Country Boy finishes are a satin and sort of a low sheen, and my procedure for putting those on are to shoot build coats, and I don't care whether I use gloss or satin for the build coats. And then as I get closer and closer to the end of the application of lacquer, then I'll switch over to a satin lacquer, and it works pretty well on these Country Boys. Unfortunately, I also have a master model coming through here, which is gloss coat all the way through, so it shows more than a satin coat will. So I can't really shoot that master model until probably September or October. Before I start, I won't shoot it until I'm 100% sure I'm not going to have this issue with the finish. So to recap things, a lot of water in the air, high humidity, high relative humidity, spray goes through the air, collects the water, hits the surface of the instrument, the water's in the lacquer skims over, hardens up on the surface. Usually it takes a while for things to work their way through the finish. You know, that's why you can smell a new car, or you can smell a new instrument and it has that lacquery smell, because it's still flashing off that thinner and stuff. And to a certain extent, some of that water will come out, but quite often not all of it. And it may take months and months just for all of the thinner to work its way out, because you can smell that new smell for quite a while, and that's what that is the solids are you're smelling the vehicle, which is the thinner of whatever application, be it a new car or a new home or a new instrument. You're smelling this stuff leach out of the material, and so it takes a while. I don't know why I told you that either, but that's also another thing that you need to be aware of when you're shooting finish. So that's kind of a non-technical, real quick walkthrough of finishing issues that you have in a high humidity environment, and that's exactly where I'm at right now. It is the last week in July, and the relative humidity is running up there in the 80s to lower 90s. About the best in the day is the mid 60s, and it just making shooting finish a very difficult thing. If I get through this one without any major issues, the next one will probably just hang here without any finish on it until the weather improves. And so that I will come with. Having said all of that, I will shut this part of the video down. I'll probably just come back on Friday and let you know what all I did get done this week, and hopefully I'll get this one finished. But just to tell you, it's already there's been a lot of family stuff to do this week, and it's already Wednesday, and this is the first little bit of video that I've been able to shoot. So anyway, we'll talk to you on Friday. As I edited that video that you just got through watching, I realized that I had left out something that I wanted to mention, and that is in the way of combating the high humidity problem. If you've got an air conditioner or a dehumidifier, and you've got a reasonably closed environment, a room that you can shut the door to or whatever, and run an air conditioner or dehumidifier in there, both of those pieces of equipment take the water out of the air. So if you can run one all day long, then you can that probably will help you a whole lot shoot and finish in the afternoon. I do have an air conditioner in that front room, but it's just a little tiny windy unit, and I don't know if you noticed it or not, I just have a curtain for a door in that room. And so when I did run the air conditioner, it did seem to help and lessen the intensity of the milk, but it didn't cure the problem at all. So I'm still kind of facing that problem, and I think I've decided just to stop the finishing process on everything right at the moment and wait until the relative humidity numbers get better. So I'm just going to finish them out, hang, I'm even going to put the color on them, the stain and everything, but I'm just going to stop just short of shooting the clear coats. So what I did for the rest of the week's work, this is mandolin number 4, and it is completely assembled now, and it has been sanded down, and the water has been put on it to raise the grain. And I have went ahead and put the handle attachment point in here. This thing really, before I can put the color on it, needs very, very little. It just needs to be sanded one more time, a quick go over with 220 grit to make sure there are no raised up scratches or anything. Take the fretboard up, put whatever we want to in the F-holes to kind of protect the inside from overspray. Put the handle on, and I'm ready to shoot stain on this or to wipe stain on it. So I'll do that much next week. In the next episode, we'll put some color on that. And the rest of the week was spent with this mandolin here, which would be mandolin number 5 in the batch. And it's the oval hole with a mahogany neck. And I've got the body completely sanded down to 100 grit, and the peg head and everything, the sides and the back, sanded down to 100 grit. And the only thing I haven't really got that far down is, of course, the neck proper itself, which I will do after the fretboard goes on. The fretboard extender has been made, and you know how I like to shoot the underside of shoot some finish on the underside of that fretboard extender because you can't get to it after it's assembled. Well, this time I've just taken a brush, and because I don't want to shoot finish on anything, so I've just taken a brush and I'm putting the clear lacquer undercoat on, or the clear lacquer coat on the underside of the fretboard extender on. I'm applying that with a brush. So it'll be ready Monday or so to glue on, and then the only thing left for this thing would be to glue the truss rod in and glue the fretboard on, peg head overlay, and then this one will be pretty much ready to get ready, which means ready to make it that far along, the handle put in and everything sanded down to 220 grit. So we're making a lot of progress on this mandolin as well. And if I get all that done next week, and there's still time left over, then we'll just tackle the remaining 5 in the batch. And they're not as far along as any of these were. They're mostly just the shell, the sides with the top glued on, have the neck blanks laid out with them, and the side blanks made out with them, but neither of those 2 parts have been shaped or gotten ready. So So there'll be some heavier construction either towards the end of next week or week after that. So we got plenty to do on this batch of mandolins, and I certainly hope that you come back next week to visit with me again. And I thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of this video. I hope you've learned something, and maybe learned a solution to an issue. And if you've got any questions about it, I said it earlier, I'm no expert, but I'll try to answer the question and give you what either works or hasn't worked for me anyway. So I'll see you next week on the next episode of the Ratliff Mandolins Production Diary. My name's Audie. I'm signing off. Thank you so much, and we'll see you then. Bye.